Hi guys, so we are back again with myself, Clinton, Adam, and JJ, and today we're going to talk about the next topic, which everyone asked about is how do I increase my bench arch? So this is more about a collaborative work for among ourselves to share with you and provide you guys with more knowledge and to improve your bench press. So instead of having a roundtable discussion at the end, which takes a very long time. And I'm sorry about our previous video where we took more time than we need. And this time around, we're gonna try and keep it as productive as possible for you guys, the viewers, so that you guys don't have to sit in front of the your laptop or phone for a long time. All right, so we're gonna jump right into how do I increase my bench arch. We're gonna talk about three different sections of it to help you all know more about this topic. And the first one will be by Adam, and he's gonna share with you about the importance of retraction and depression. So Adam, take it away.
Thanks, Clinton. So yeah, as Clinton was saying, I'm going to go through the importance of scapular retraction and shoulder depression in the bench press and why we should do it. So first up in the first slides, thank you for Clinton for letting me use your photos. You can see clearly that the shoulders are elevated in these photos, which engages the smaller muscle groups in the upper back. So you're heavily relying on your traps, your delts, and your rhomboid minor to stabilize the bench press from the back standpoint. So in this position, it's really hard to engage your lats and your rhomboid major. It's basically pretty much impossible to engage your lats. So if you try to elevate your shoulders like this and you try and engage your lats, it's literally impossible. So the lats are a big muscle group in your back and you really want to engage them for the bench press. So having your shoulders elevated is just not productive. And even in a neutral upper back position, you're still going to get some lat engagement, but you're not going to have the full potential. So with elevated shoulders or even just, neutral back, the joints are not stacked at the optimal position. Elevated shoulder is probably the worst spot to be. Neutral position, it's okay, but it's not in the best position. Also increases the range of motion, and it's harder to perform the efficient bench pass. So going to the next slide, we got good upper back position, shoulders are depressed. You can see the rhomboid major is activated here, which it's what its job to do is to keep the shoulders stabilized into that lock position, and then activates the lat muscle. So the harder you can depress your shoulders, the more activation you can get through your lats, which also helps increase thoracic extension, and then gets the sternum up too. So increases the range, decreases the range of motion, increases the arch, helps increase the arch. Also, it gets your joints in a better position and stacked. So instead of relying on your joints, you're relying on big muscle groups to protect your joints. Decreases the range of motion, and it's easier to perform the efficient bar path. So the key takeaways are correct shoulder depression and scapular retraction. It increases engagement in the big upper back muscles and helps protect your shoulder joints. Also provides a solid and stable base for your humerus to move around. So your humerus is your upper arm here, and it can move around for a solid base, protecting your smaller muscle groups and your joint. It's also a key component with a foundation to a strong bench press setup. So alongside with the leg drive and feet positioning. And also the last thing, if you're unable to perform a proper shoulder depression and retraction when going maximal arch, then you need to rely on your priorities. There's no point arching as much as you can if you can't retract and depress your shoulders. You need to be able to depress and retract your shoulders before you can start working on your arch. So that is more important than cutting your range of motion. You work on the first priority first, and then work on increasing that bench ask. So that's it for my slides. So we're going to move on to Clinton, and he's going to go through what the thoracic spine's job is and what it does throughout the bench press.
All right. Thank you, Adam. That was short and sweet. All right, guys, if you want to know how, and more importantly, the retraction and depression of the shoulders, we have Tiny Matters YouTube page actually have a video to teach you how to create that position and create more stability on the bench press. So be sure to check it out. Okay, so as you guys know, we have a sequence in showing you how to increase the bench charge. And the first one was actually from Adam, which is retraction and depression. So that's the first step. So obviously, if you cannot create that retraction and depression, the subsequent steps are actually doesn't make sense for you guys to do if you guys cannot do the retraction and depression. So make sure you guys learn and know how to do that retraction and depression, because it is somehow related to what I'm gonna say, because the images that you have seen from the previous few minutes which Adam has shared, it's quite relatable to what I'm trying to say. Okay, so today I'm gonna talk about the thoracic spine and how does it relate to increasing the bench arch. Okay, so because this topic is really, really dry, so I'm not gonna discuss it in a very scientific and biomechanical way, but instead I'm gonna try and discuss it cater to you guys, the viewers, which is more layman and very simple to understand. Okay, all right. So okay, I'm sorry because this is an anatomic view of a spine, but it is needed to know. So this is your anatomy of your spine, so which is your back lah. So you see the in between. It's not a rod. It is built up with a lot of vertebrae. Okay, so there are 3 columns of it. So as you can see on the left side, there are 3 columns. Okay, there's the cervical, thoracic, and lumbar. Okay, so obviously what we're looking at is a thoracic vertebrae, because if you think about it, cervical vertebrae is around your neck area, so the one that connects your neck to the thoracic, right? So obviously in a bench arch, we don't need to arch that part. Okay, so what do you think? If you extend your neck like that, it's not gonna make any sense for your bench, because our neck needs to be in as neutral as possible. So you tuck your chin in so that it's straight on the bench. We're talking about IPF bench. So when it's straight and fully firm on the bench, you can create that stability. Okay, so obviously we are not trying to extend the lumbar vertebrae as well, because if you extend the lumbar vertebrae, all the weight will be, when you unrack, right? And when you put your foot on the floor, all the weight will be there, and then you feel a lot of lower back pain. And then you start to wonder, oh, is bench arch about extending my lumbar? Obviously not, guys. So we are talking about the thoracic vertebrae. So the thoracic vertebrae is somewhere around here. So it's from T1 to T12. So vertebrae have thoracic vertebrae at 12. So if there are tango 1 to 12, okay. So the function of the thoracic spine, right, is actually to create a couple of movements, okay, a forward backward movement, okay, side bending, okay, and axial rotation. So axial rotation is turning about like that. Okay, so why is it important to have a thoracic spine with all this function? Because it helps to create stability, obviously, when you walk. Okay, so if you cannot do any of this, right, the only way you can commute walking from distance position A to B is to crawl. Okay, so our human is so wise enough and fortunate enough to have this spine functionality so that we can walk like a man, right? Okay, so but here's the thing, our thoracic section, right, the range of motions are often limited because this side is attached to the ribcage. So now that we are only talking about the posterior view, which is the behind, right? We forget about the in front. We have a rib cage for us, and it's attached to the thoracic, which is why our range of motion is limited. But you imagine flexion, right? Meaning you bend down. So you bend down, right? You always feel like, oh, I'm restricted by my rib cage. So obviously, like I believe if you read the news, like old news, like some people actually took out their ribs so that they can bend more to do some activities which I don't want to discuss about, but you can go and find out. But if you guys know what I'm talking about, then good job to you. Okay, now we're gonna move on to the next slide. Okay, so this because of the context of the bench, right? We are not talking about bending and rotation, because for bench we don't need that, right? We want to create that flexion and extension. But this is what you need to know. for our thoracic spine, right, as you can see here, so this is the posterior view, right, on the left side, this side, as you can see, it's always flex. So your thoracic spine, you think about, you look at yourself in the mirror from the side, right, your spine, right, especially your thoracic area, is always flexed, so it's naturally flexed. So there's no way for you to be fully extended, because that's not how a human anatomy should be like. So you should be like kind of slouching a little bit. That's fine. So you don't need to force yourself to be hyperextended all the time. It's gonna kill you. Okay, so this is our natural flex can go up to like it's about 40 to 45 degree. For full flex, right, meaning you try to reach for toes, right, it's about 70 degrees. Okay, but here's the thing, for our thoracic spine, right, we can flex, our natural flex is 40 to 45 degree, but our degree of extension is only about 20 to 25 degrees. So let's do some math over here. So it's the amount of flex we can do is 2:1 as compared to extension. Okay, so the thing about it, if you cannot flex, so let's say you can only flex 10 degree, means you can only extend 5 degree. So what I'm trying to say here, right, here's the hint. If you want to be able to extend more, you need to be able to flex more and do rotational more. So the mobility of the thoracic needs to be there. Okay. However, right, here's the thing. Why, if a reduce in flexion is required to allow full shoulder flexion, what does it mean? So as I mentioned, our thoracic is always flexed. So we talk about extension. When we talk about extension, it means a reduced inflection. It makes sense, right? So it's just wording. So all I can say is, if you want, our thoracic needs to be extended so that we can allow full shoulder flexion. So this is what I mean by full shoulder flexion. It means that your arm, right, can bring up to here. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, if your shoulders are not extended, your thoracic is not extended, you cannot untap the full range of motion of your shoulders. Okay, if your if you see from the picture from Adam's presentation, so the first picture is obviously my back view. Obviously, that's my back. So it's in a very neutral position. In the neutral position, your thoracic spine is flexed, so there's no way for you to retract and depress. Whereas for his next photo, right, is where my thoracic is the flexion is reduced, so I'm extended, which is why I can get my shoulder retraction and depression in the right position. So it's important for you to be able to extend your thoracic to create that right shoulder retraction and depression. Okay, so this is why the thoracic extension is needed, so that like I said, for you to get into a better position. So you need to reduce the flexion, because our body is always in a natural flex to get the extension. So what I'm trying to say is, you need to really untap the full range of motion of your thoracic spine. So what should you do, to be honest? Okay, so like I said, your thoracic spine, right, can do a lot of stuff like flex, bend, rotate, and extend. So you need to be willing to free up all this range of motion so that you can create that thoracic extension. So the more range of motion you can untap, the better you can extend. But as you know, the maximum degree of extension can only be that way, because this is how our body works. Okay, but what you can improve on is obviously the retraction and depression now. Okay, so now that I've talked to you about the very layman about thoracic spine, I don't know if anyone has ever talked about thoracic spine in such an interesting way like I do. Just kidding. But now I'm going to talk a little bit more about the lumbar spine. Okay, so the lumbar spine, right, what does it do is actually to support the weight of the upper body. Okay, and it also transfer the load from the upper body to the legs, and vice versa, from the legs to upper body. So if you talk about the bench, right, the leg drive, right, is to transfer force up into our upper body. Okay, so our lumbar spine needs to keep as neutral as possible to make sure there's a good transfer of forces. So it's like squat, right? Imagine you hyperextend your back. There's no good transfer of forces. So in a bench arch, right, we want to extend the thoracic spine by keeping our lumbar neutral, so that the leg drive can still be there. If not, when you bench, right, if you extend your lumbar spine, you always feel a lot of lower back pain, and then the impingement will come, and then you can no longer deadlift or squat if you really strain up your lower back. Okay, so always try to keep it neutral. So in order to increase the bench arch, right, the retraction and depression is still very, very, very important. Okay, And then you need to learn how to improve your range of motion on the thoracic spine by standing ball. So be able to reach other parts of the range of motion for thoracic spine to get the extension, not foam rolling all the time. Because if you just foam rolling the back, right, the thoracic there, right, there's not much muscles to foam roll, right? Those muscles are all superficial muscles. Okay, and then okay, so now that I've talked about the posterior view, I hope I don't talk too much. So now that we have talked about all the posterior view, so Adam talked about the behind of the retraction and depression, the scapula. I talk about the behind the spine. So we just don't end here, because what we do at Technique Matters, right, is we continue to learn, research, and we don't stop. So when we think about posterior view, there's always an anterior view. So I believe not many of you right there know about the anterior view. So JJ is going to talk to you about it.
All right, so thanks, Clinton, for that. So what I'm going to talk about with regard to improving the bench arch is actually your ribcage mechanics. So you know that, okay, so Clinton has already mentioned that your thoracic spine is a lot less mobile than your lumbar spine, due to the fact that that obviously you have ribcage there. So it's also one of the reasons why it's kind of more okay to flex your thoracic spine in something like a deadlift, because there's actually a structure there to help you create more stability. Not saying that you should totally round over, but that's one of the reasons why it is also more okay to flex the thoracic spine. Okay, so let's move. Let's move into the anatomy of the ribcage. So similarly to the thoracic spine, the ribcage has 12 pairs of ribs, so and a sternum. So you have and it's all so ribs 1 to 7 are the true ribs, which are ribs that have a direct attachment to the sternum, and 8 to 12 are considered the false ribs. So ribs 8 to 10 have a sort of like cartilaginous attachment to the sternum, and 11 to 12 are just floating ribs, so they don't attach to the sternum at all. So the function of your rib cage is basically to give you support in that area, to protect your vital organs such as your lungs and your heart, because those are actually really, really, really important organs. And one of the things that it also does is it helps in respiration as well. So it helps you to breathe in and breathe out, and helps for the exchange of oxygen. So one of the things that when I first talk to people about the rib cage is that they don't understand that your rib cage absolutely must move. It is a structure that is meant to be mobile. If it is not mobile, you will die, because you imagine your lungs and your lungs won't be able to change its volumes. And if you understand anything about physics, if you don't have a change in volume, there's no change in pressure. And if there's no change in pressure, there's no exchange of gases. So you can't bring air in, or you can't bring air out. So this is the top priority of your body above everything else. So your rib cage must be a mobile rib cage. If it isn't, your body will find some other way to create that mobility. So what it will do is probably use some accessory muscles to help you to pull and move your rib cage. So this is one of the reasons why sometimes you feel like your traps are tight when you sit for too long and stuff like that. And all of this will actually affect how much mobility you have in the rib cage, and that will transfer to how well you can arch on the bench press. Okay, so there are two important muscles that I want to focus on in terms of regarding to the anatomy of the rib cage, which is the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. So most people know about diaphragm. It's kind of like a trampoline structure that moves up and down to help you pump air in and out of your body. And the other muscle that most people don't really consider is actually intercostal muscles. So what the intercostal muscles are actually muscles in between your ribs. So if you imagine that people just think that the rib cage and then they have all this surrounding musculature, but there's actually muscles that are in between the ribs as well. And this is also one of the reasons why I think some people, when they retract and depress the shoulders, they say, oh coach, my shoulder blades have a bit of my scapula have a bit of a pinching sensation in between the scaps, and no matter how much I foam roll or no matter how much I get a lacrosse ball in it, I cannot seem to release the knot. Well, let me suggest to you that maybe the knot is not within the superficial muscles around your scapula, but it's actually deep inside where your intercostal muscles are. So if you look at the back of your spine and you have your intercostal muscles and you are always extended, your intercostal muscles between the ribs will get really tight. So, and then you have your scapula that sits on top of it, and then you have your rhomboids, your traps, your lats, right? And you're getting a lacrosse ball. There's no way the lacrosse ball will ever get into these deep muscles. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why breathing is also a key component to getting the ribcage mobility back. Okay, so if you find all of this hard to imagine, I want you to think about these three things. So, Mr. Arnold Schwarzenegger over here, a crushed Coke can, as well as some juicy baby back ribs. So what are the three things that these have in common? Okay, so if you look back at the anatomy of a rib cage, right? Let's talk about how all of these contribute to increasing your bench arch. So first of all, a lot of people, when they talk about powerlifting or when they look at the biomechanics, they like to think of the body as levers. Okay, but there's an incomplete model, because the body is not just about moment arms and stuff. You need to consider that within your body there are actually like human beings are 80% water, right? So in order to form a certain shape, such as increasing your bench arch and bringing your chest high, you need to think about how you're moving the fluids away from certain points and placing it in places where you have more quote-unquote space. So this is where the Coke can analogy comes. Okay, so imagine if a Coke can is totally full, that is like you being a totally stable and totally like stacked kind of as you would be in your squat and your deadlift, which is not really what you want in your bench press. So a lot of people will think, okay, I need to brace in the same way. But if you brace your core, right, your core will actually pull your ribs down, which is not what you want if you want your ribs to be high. Okay, so you see Arnold over here, what he's really good at, and in terms of, or what we can learn from bodybuilders is that they do this thing called a stomach vacuum, right? So what this does is actually it actually creates actually compresses their guts together. So yes, your guts are fluid, so and actually moves your diaphragm upwards. So what this does is actually bring your also ribs up, right? So that you can look like you have a bigger torso up top, which is what we really want. Okay, and then so what does the baby back ribs have to do with all of this? The baby back ribs, the ability of your ribs to move will be constituted by how well your intercostals can create that movement and how well they can move up and stretch and also contract. Okay, so all these things will contribute to you having a big bench press arch. First of all, you need to know how to move the fluids within your body, and that is done through breathing, right? Second of all, is you need to kind of learn how to do the stomach vacuum, which will cause your chest to come up, and all of this will be allowed by the fact of how mobile your intercostal muscles are. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the mechanics of all of these things, right? So how do we go about improving the range of your intercostal muscles? So your intercostal muscles are very, very deep muscles as compared to, say, your lats or your pecs or your traps and stuff. So these are not things that you can go and stretch out and you can go and mobilize by using like a Terra gun on it, right? So what we need to do is, you need to think about how can we stretch you from the inside out. And one of the ways that I like to do this is I posted this on my Instagram, so you can go and have a look if you want in my highlights, is you need to use air to be able to do it. So think about it this way. Most people, when they breathe, and most people, when they are taught to have a quote unquote good posture, they will think about shoulders back and chest up, right? Even in primary school, people tell you don't slouch, don't slouch. So what this does actually, it will create a compression at the back of your rib cage, and it will make you already extended. So if you're already extended, you can't extend anymore. Think about being in a car park where you need to do a 3-point turn to turn, right? If you keep going forward, there's just no more space for you to go into. So now you actually need to reverse a bit to create that space so that you can actually move, right? So you can access what Clinton talked about: rotation, flexion, side bending, lateral flexion, all that kind of stuff, right? So you need to use the air to expand up the upper back. So in this position, what I'm actually doing is actually creating what we call posterior expansion. We breathe in through. First of all, we need to exhale all the air. We need to empty out all the air in our lungs. So think about me crushing out the Coke can before I can refill the Coke can, right? I need to empty out the Coke can first before I can get more contents in it, right? So what I'm doing here is actually I'm breathing in. I'm getting into this position away from gravity. I'm making sure that I don't flex, which means that my sternum isn't pointing down towards my belly button, but rather my sternum is facing parallel to the floor, and I'm pushing my sternum back up into the sky. And as I inhale, I'm using the air to stretch out the back of my rib cage. So what that does, it will open up all the tight intercostal muscles by using the air, because the air pressure and the fluid pressure will push the ribs apart and create that. And then after that, how we want to integrate this into the stomach vacuum concept would be, we will use a foam roller to put us in that position so that we can learn to breathe and pull the sternum, exhale and pull the sternum back up and create that stomach vacuum. So I know a lot of people will look at the foam roller T-spine mobility drill, and this is the first thing they will go to, because they keep thinking, I want to extend. But let me suggest to you that if you don't do the all four belly lift first, and you don't learn how to expand your rib cage first, you will not be able to get that mobility to do the T-spine drill. And the T-spine drill will just feel incredibly tough, incredibly painful. So if you don't want to heed my advice and you want to go for the most popular or the most sort of Instagram worthy drill, you can just do the T-spine mobility drill by itself, and you can just not do the all four belly lift, and and then you can also try doing the all four belly lift first and doing the T-spine drill and see the difference that it makes in terms of increasing that rib cage mobility. Okay, so in terms of increasing your bench up and what it has to do with the rib cage, stop bracing like you. So now the first thing you should do is you stop bracing like you do in the squat and the deadlift. Stop thinking about using your abs. You do need a bit of low stability in the lower torso, because you want that transfer from the leg drive to the bench, right? But if you really flex your abs hard, what it will do is to cause you to actually flatten out your rib cage. All right. So the second thing as well is also you should, one of the things that I like to emphasize to my athletes is keep your glutes loose. So don't squeeze your glutes, because what you do when you squeeze your glutes is your glutes are actually spinal extenders. So what it does is basically you'll pull your hips forward and you actually flatten out your arch. So if you do that, you will actually lose the kind of arch that you have created. Okay, and the next part is you need to remobilize your rib cage through breathing. So first of all, you should be able to learn how to control your breathing outside of the position. So something like the all four belly lift, and then control your breathing in position, which will be the T-spine mobility drill. And the one advice I can give to you is you should never stop arching. So this is something that I learned very, very early on in my powerlifting career. You should always find a way to arch more, because you can never be good enough at arching. If you want the most competitive benefit out of your powerlifting performance, then you shouldn't get complacent and say that, okay, this arch is enough for me. All right. So this is kind of like, in terms of what we've talked about today, we've talked about scapular retraction and depression. We talked about the T-spine, as well. We talked about the rib cage. So I think in terms of that, you should look at the level of priority. So going back to what Adam said, if you can, all of this doesn't matter if you haven't got the level 1, which is the shoulder depression and retraction, down, because the more mobile you get, the actually less stable you'll be. So you actually need, the more mobile you'll get, you need to actually increase your stability by maybe 1 or 2 times that amount. So all of these things are never okay, now I've gotten it, I can move on to the next thing. It's more of like, how can I drive all of these qualities to improve at the same time. Okay, so that's a presentation from me. Thanks, guys.
All right, so it was pretty, even though we try to keep it short, yeah, but it was still pretty in-depth for you guys. And I mean, all the things that we have talked about today must be somewhere or another new to you. And I hope that you guys have learned something. So I think it's quite important for you, especially in my opinion, for bench, retraction, depression, T-spine, thoracic spine mobility. And like Gigi has said, learning how to breathe in a bench, because I have a lot of athletes who try to brace their core like they are bracing for squat and deadlift, and they lose the stability and positioning for the bench press. So one of the things that you guys can try to adopt is try to understand how your breathing works, because I don't think many people do understand that, which is why sometimes you may feel very tired all the time because you're not breathing right. And also, when you bench, usually we try to breathe into the lungs, because that will help to extend, to stretch out the intercostal muscles, that ribcage where JJ has just mentioned about. So all the vacuum abs, where Arnold Schwarzenegger or the old school bodybuilders used to do that. But nowadays, you know, the new bodybuilders cannot even do the vacuum abs because of their gut, right? But all in all, we have shown you and gave you all an idea of how do I increase my bench arch, and I hope that all these things are pretty useful to you. If you want to learn more and improve your skill in the bench press, you can also watch our bench press video. And obviously, with all this knowledge in hand, and for weeks to come when you're finally able to train again, if you guys need a program and a guidance, you must always look for a coach, and all 3 of us are obviously coaches, and we are more than ready to serve and help you guys. So remember to ring us on Instagram. It's either you talk to us on Technique Matters on our individual IG. And till then, any more you want to share, Adam and JJ?
No, that's all good.
All right, man. So we have said enough, and we are sick of talking, and I'll see you again, because the next topic we're going to talk about is, why is my weakest lift always so weak? Why is my bench always suck, right? So we're going to try out a new activity where we invite some of you guys in to share your story with us. So it's like a therapy session, you know, where we try to console you and tell you that your lift is not weak. Okay. All right, so till then, I'll see you. So more activities and more post up will be updated on Instagram. So be sure to follow us on Instagram. And if you don't want to miss out any content on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to us. And if you find this content useful, please help to share and like this video. And till then, I'll see you. Goodbye.